trying not to use obscenities, but they don't own human communications, right? We just let them tell us that they own human communications. They don't. We need to have such a robust analog communications habit again, people talking face to face, going to town hall meetings, going to school board meetings, going to vote in person, watching the polls, lobbying their congressman in person, lobbying their state senator in person, organizing their neighbors, that these people know they can't restrict the flow of information if they decide to censor us or promote nothing but propaganda. Humans are able to I'm a CEO of a tech company, and there is no technology and no surveillance technology that is equal to two human beings communicating in a room.
In 2023, according to MIT Living Wage Calculator, folks in major cities needed around $68,499 just to make ends meet comfortably. But guess what happened next? In just 1 year, that number shot up a whopping 40% to $96,500. Can you believe how much inflation has affected us? That's the kind of inflation that keeps us up at night. Now, I don't know about you, but I sure can't afford to keep pace with that kind of skyrocketing cost of living. It's downright scary. But you know what's even scarier? Not doing anything about it. That's why I've been talking to folks over at Miles Franklin. They're all about helping regular people like you and me protect our hard-earned savings. With gold and silver, you can lock in the value of your money and shield yourself from the ups and downs of the economy. So if you are like me and want to keep your nest eggs safe and sound, reach out to Miles Franklin at info@milesfranklin.com. Just mention my name, Sarah sent me, and they'll take care of you like family, because it's just how we do things here in Middle America. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your future today. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Naomi Wolf coming to the program. She has some explosive information to share. She doesn't think there's going to be an election. She's going to explain why or what she thinks is going to happen. She thinks the country has already been taken over, and you're going to hear her whole thing on that and what she believes. This is why she was hacked on Twitter, and all of her different platforms were hacked after she went on Alex Jones and talked about this. So I wanted her to explain what happened and what her theories are. And we went further on some of this. But then I also started sharing some of the investigative work that I've been doing. I saw some journalists that are being promoted on YouTube, getting millions of views. And with my background being kicked off every platform possible, and YouTube, especially, people who follow me know how, I got my YouTube platform back for a day and then they kicked me down. And so when I see people who were covering controversial things like I was, and then also doing really controversial things now, and they're being promoted, I take a step back and go, wait a minute, there's something more going on. And so I started doing a lot of investigative work trying to figure it out. And in the process, I learned that, and you'll hear a little bit about this. The interesting thing is you get to hear a conversation that I probably would have had with her privately, because I don't have all the receipts of everything. I have some receipts of some things, and you're going to hear some of it. But I don't like to go public unless I absolutely have the receipts. And in this case, I'm not even sure how helpful it is, even though she thinks it is. Some of it may be, as I learn more. But I'm telling you, the biggest thing that you'll hear is that there is a funding mechanism for all these independent media people. Not all, but a lot of them. A lot of them that come across as really independent, that claim that they have they're supported by donations. That's all bull. I'm telling you right now, anybody that claims that everything they do is through sponsorship, maybe if they're on Substack and they got quite a bit of sponsors, maybe, that way. But in general, just getting donations is not usually how it's done. And I just don't believe that. And through my research, I'm learning that there's a whole independent funding mechanism for whether, I bring up some awards, that's just one thing, but there's other independent mechanisms and independent funding that's going on. There's handlers, there's a lot more behind this. And even today I learned something about another big funding mechanism for another group of independent journalists who claim to be independent, but they tend to be on the other side. So it's like all sides of this thing are being funded, and they've been funded in organized ways. So there's people like me who really are independent. I'm trying to make money doing affiliates and things so I can do this for you. And then there's people who come across as they're more journalists instead of, that's what they call themselves. And there's this whole funding mechanism for them. And it makes sense because if you think about the whole mainstream media has always been supported by these, we know it's a front. A lot of it is, and there's funding to allow these places to go on. There's intelligence agency funding, there's state funding, there's donations coming through commercials, like Big Pharma will advertise on their networks, and that's not how they make all their money, but they're doing it to help promote the propaganda, and so it's a way to funnel them money. There's all sorts of funding mechanisms. Well, in the independent media, there is too. And so when you see millions of views going on YouTube, then you start going, wait a minute, who's funding this? And I don't even care anymore because we know that's what's happening. The mainstream media is shifting to the independent media and they're becoming it, okay? And that's just how the whole industry works. So the question is, what is their agenda? That's what's meaningful here because we already know that that's the business model, right? So we can't get too worked up on it. That's what they did in the mainstream media. That's what they're doing in the independent media. So, which isn't all that independent. So what is their agenda? The problem I have is that the agenda that they're pushing is that everything's hopeless. Everyone's bad. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in this interview. Everyone's bad. So it's a helpless situation and it's learned helplessness. And so many people are checking out and not wanting to do anything. And that's the game plan. That's the great reset, is for people to just check out. I don't care. It's in God's hands or whatever you say. And they don't like anybody. But it's just not true at the local levels. You can argue all day long that maybe at the federal level, there's some bad guys. And there are some, like, I like Massey. I think there's other Congress people that are good. And so you got to see who's fighting for you and who's not. But at your local level, at your state level, where most of this stuff happens, there are good people fighting the cause. And so if you just give up on all of it, you're giving up and they're winning. They're going to bring in this communist agenda they have, this great reset. And even if you think it all needs to come down so that we can create a better thing for humanity, are you doing anything about it? If you're not, then their reset's going to happen. And so that's what I don't like about it, is I think a lot of these journalists that are being propagated are telling people that everybody's bad and the whole thing needs to come down. And so we have this conversation about it, and you could hear kind of like what I would have on the phone with somebody is really what I would have done. So, but anyway, you get to hear it. But the really explosive stuff, I think, is what she thinks about the 2024 election and that it's not going to happen. But before I get into that, I want to share with you this nanosoma, which is just amazing stuff. It turns on all 48 nuclear receptors. And what that does is that allows your body to heal from so many different things. It basically your body figures out what it needs to heal from. And it also gets your body to start creating its own vitamin C. Did you know that we haven't been creating our own vitamin C for millions of years, but our body still expects us to? So we have to get it from all of our food. Well, this gets your body creating its own vitamin C again. It also helps you regulate your vitamin D. Our body doesn't regulate our vitamin D at the proper levels. This thing is amazing. A lot of people are responding in all sorts of, whatever your health issue is, your body can start to heal from it. And this is doing amazing things. The rule of thumb is that you need to use this for a month for each year that you've had some kind of problem. And you start to see things, your body heal. Your body heals itself, and this helps trigger that healing process. It's amazing. If you are a first-time customer, you can save 10% by signing up for the newsletter. Otherwise, use the link below or go to sarahwestall.com under shop and look for Nanosoma. And before we get into my conversation with Naomi Wolf, I don't have my camera, so it wasn't working. So it's just going to be me off camera, but I think you can handle that. Let's get into my good conversation with Naomi Wolf. Hi, Naomi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. You had some crazy things happen recently. You went on Alex Jones, and then your Twitter account was hacked, and you came out with some pretty explosive information on the Biden family, which I think a lot of people already knew about it in the independent media, but you had some other information that's coming out that they were actually starting to leak things. Can you share some of this explosive information that you brought out on Alex Jones, and people can see for themselves or hear for themselves why it was so explosive?
Sure. I'll do my best, but things that I think are explosive may be different from what you think is explosive.
For
sure. Please let me know if I haven't addressed some of the things you wanted to talk about. Well, basically, for those who are not familiar with my bio, I used to be a Democratic political consultant in the Clinton era. I advised the chief advisor for President Clinton's reelection campaign in '96. And I advised Vice President Al Gore in his run for the presidency, which won the popular vote. Of course, it was disputed and went up to the Supreme Court for the electoral vote. But and he didn't win as a result of that dispute, but he won the popular vote. And so I know how the DNC works. I mean, granted, it was, decades ago, but they have a basic pattern of functioning. As a result of that experience, and I walked away. I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm an independent because this party doesn't resemble the Democratic Party I used to respect. As a result of that experience, I could tell, and I wrote an essay immediately after July 11th's assassination attempt against President Trump, that there would soon be a coup. And I wrote that. And I followed it up with an essay called Lady McBiden, in which I predicted that the coup would revolve around likely hiding and reacting to likely criminal actions by members of the Biden family. And it was pretty easy for me to foretell that if you've got the kind of assassination attempt that we saw, even before all of the commentators rightly, thank God for citizen journalism and, citizen investigators. But, right, I think I wrote my essay on that Saturday or Sunday. I probably wrote it on the 14th of July, the day after. And then a few days later, Lady McBiden. So I could tell that probably Mrs. Biden, who had liaised with Cheadle, the Secret Service director at that time, had pulled Secret Service. I mean, I'm so familiar with advance teams from having been a White House spouse. My husband at that time was a Clinton campaign speechwriter, or a Clinton speechwriter, forgive me, and also for having been an advisor to two campaigns. The process of having an event, like any event, right? But like FLOTUS's event, meaning the First Lady of the United States, which was interestingly at exactly the same time in the same state, 52 minutes away as President Trump's event, the Vice President's event, which was also that same day in the same state. There's a very standard protocol, which is ironclad for holding any event for any of what are called the principals, the president, the vice president, a former president, et cetera. And these involve advanced teams going to the venue prior to the event, right? Like days before, scouting out everything, making sure it's okay. There's a chain of command that signs off on it. You literally can't have the kind of lapses in security that led to the assassination attempt and one murder, let's not forget, of someone in the audience heroically trying to protect his family. You can't have that without a lot of active commission, right? And so my guess was that Mrs. Biden, we would see that Mrs. Biden had pulled a lot of Secret Service off of President Trump's event for her very safe, relatively event, an indoor event at a casino, with one entry, one exit, with 200 people, right? And my guess was she had made a big demand on Secret Service, and somehow Secret Service was, and probably the vice president's event made a big demand on Secret Service, and we would see internal communications that wouldn't say, let them assassinate President Trump, because there's always deniability and innuendo, and nothing's ever directly stated at that level, but that we'd see communications, because I don't think Mrs. Biden is very smart, and she's not very sophisticated, and I think she's also crazed with power, which is a certain condition that people can get in those roles. So I wouldn't expect that she'd be careful, right? And so my assumption was that after the assassination attempt, which didn't go the way they thought it would go, right? They expected, their planning was the nation would be in mourning, everyone would be hugely distracted by this huge figure being taken off the chessboard, right? Well, that didn't happen. So what I predicted was there is an internal huge scramble, because my expectation was someone in the Biden family had done something wrong to the point of criminal, right? There would be a record of it. And so I was expecting that there would be factions in which some elements in the White House, whether it was the chief of staff or the Obama, Schumer, Pelosi, DNC team, or the Harris team, or both, right? Really three coups fighting it out. The latter two would be distancing themselves from the Bidens. And I said this before President Biden.
Which is what they're doing.
Exactly. So then it wasn't a surprise to me that there was this clearly fake letter that showed up on Twitter saying that President Biden was stepping aside. I don't think he wrote it. I said at the time that I didn't think he wrote it, because the FEC has very strict regulations for every communication from a candidate. It has to say, for instance, I wrote this, I'm the candidate, I've signed off on this. That letter didn't have any of that language that the FEC requires. And I, at that
was
time,
out of the public light for those 5 days too. It's very weird.
Totally.
Did you know that our body stopped creating its own vitamin C millions of years ago? Unlike most animals on this planet, our body does not create our own vitamin C. We need to consume food to get what we need. The problem is, our body still acts like we create our own vitamin C. But this is where the power of nanosoma comes in. It not only triggers your body to start creating its own vitamin C again, it also triggers your body to turn on all 48 nuclear receptors. This enables your body to start to regulate its vitamin D levels, your thyroid, and so many other amazing things. The testimonials from those who have been using this product is absolutely incredible. You can learn more, buy with the link below at sarahwestall.com under shop. If you want to first see studies and testimonials that are quite amazing, sign up for their newsletter. You will be amazed. Again, use the link below or go to sarahwestall.com under shop to learn more or to buy. First time customers save 10%.
Very weird. I'm glad you brought that up. I kept saying, we don't know he's alive. We don't know he's conscious. That's not President Biden. Pardon me. He vanished, right? It was reported by a couple of people, Laura Loomer and just Jordan Schachtel, and then later confirmed by the Wall Street Journal belatedly, that there had been a medical emergency in Las Vegas. And, then audio was released to the Wall Street Journal recently, showing that this was true and that streets had been cleared to take Biden to the hospital. And instead of taking him to the hospital, probably very irresponsibly, his handlers took him to Delaware. And then for 5 days, he was incommunicado. No video, no photographs. And this is, again, I wrote about this, very anomalous. When a president, or a king for that matter, is injured or reputed to be dead or, damaged, they always reveal themselves, to show their subjects or their citizens that there's not a vacuum at the top, that, the ship of state is safe. Because, again, we're a republic, and there's a very clear chain of command in Article 25 of the Constitution if the executive is impaired or dead, right? So there was none of that. And then I'm fast forwarding a little, but we then saw, right, the Obama, Schumer, Pelosi DNC coup. Later, Nancy Pelosi confirmed that they, bullied and threatened Biden to step aside. He didn't want to. At the DNC convention last night, one of his colleagues basically said he hadn't wanted to, that he'd been forced out. Harris, like a deer in headlights, was thrust in. It wasn't clear if the Harris team and the Obama team are the same team. Probably not. It's my guess that she's not going to be the eventual candidate, but she might be.
Hold on, that's something I want to dive into a little bit. You don't think she'll be the eventual candidate, although even though at the DNC convention this week she has, she got the delegates. How do you think they're going to move forward and not make her the candidate at this point? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, I should probably revise my projections. Up till this week, I was saying it's a good bet that either she or Walz won't make it to November, because she's just such a loser candidate.
She's terrible.
A candidate. She's terrible. No one likes her. Black people, which they were counting on, don't like her. Women don't particularly like her. And she's just bad. I guess, and also I didn't think that she had the support of the mafiosi who are around Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer. But so I expected, honestly, this week for Mrs. Obama or Mrs. Clinton to make some kind of, to make some kind of
a pledge or something.
To a purge of some kind. Yes. It looks like I'm wrong. I just don't have the gut feeling that she's going to make it to November.
Are they locked in a corner? See, this is what I'm starting to think. They're locked in a corner. They feel they have to use her. I don't know why they pick Walz. I'm from Minnesota, and Walz is our governor. He's so bad. He's so bad. And it seems like they just are, nobody cares about this election, even though they care. It's just all the actions just don't seem like normal people making rational decisions to win an election.
Well, you're right. And you're right to notice that. And I was talking to a young friend, he's 30. And I was asking him about his friend's reaction, because they're like very independent to left, right, to the DNC. And we all agreed that there was kind of a creepy vibe. Like there was just a creepy feeling about it. I've never seen anything like it before. So I think you're right that it's very icy theater. But I think the reason it's icy theater at this point is not because they're going to replace her. They would have replaced her at the convention if they were going to replace her. So I guess I have to revise that. Even though, again, I'm just going to say for the record, my gut is that she won't be there in November. I don't know why I feel that, but I do.
Well, some people think that she's going to be elevated to president because, Biden's just really bad too. It's incredible. And
that's certainly
Yeah,
possible. Yeah. And should be according to our
for
system.
sure.
I don't like her, but he's like, no one is running the United States of America right now, Sarah. And that is so dangerous. No one is in charge. We don't know who's in charge. There's no chain of command. It's an absolute mess. Other people have pointed out that, the head of the army is making decisions and the chief of staff is making decisions. Like, there are all these fiefdoms making
For
decisions.
sure.
It's absolute chaos and it makes us very, very vulnerable. But just to wrap up, and then I promise I'll pause. I feel like they're going through the motions in this weird way because there will be, God forbid, but I just feel it, everything's put in place for it, an attack, a dirty bomb, a nuclear attack, an epidemic won't do it, even though they're clearly rolling that out. I just feel like all these military age men they've stationed all over the country are going to rise up, late October, early November in some catastrophic November 7th type way, and will be dealing with state of emergency in which elections will be called off. And the reason, so it kind of doesn't matter what they do with Mrs. Harris now. And the reason I'm so sure of that is that if, these people are like Alex Jones asked me, what is the signal that a coup has taken, what will be the trigger that will know that a coup is, going to start? And I said, it was a sad moment because he's so smart about these things. It was sad just because I knew as soon as I said it, he would understand what I was saying. I said, Alex, it's already happened. Like the coup has already happened. The invasion has already happened. The decision not to have a normal election has already taken place. We're already there. It's there. This country.
They're just implementing it. They're just waiting for the next phase of the implementation.
No, I would say it even more harshly. They're implementing it all around us and calling it something else.
That's like the 5th gen warfare stuff that I've been talking about.
No doubt. Forgive me for not knowing exactly how you're defining it, but I'm sure you're right? Just invade a country and call it, mass migration of newcomers, station people in barracks and call them housing, confiscate people's guns as much as you can and call it gun safety, have an adversary buy up all the farmland and ports and call it commerce, propagandize kids to the culture of the communist invaders and call it school, buy off or imprison all of the opposition, which has happened, and call it justice. They're literally just, the coup is unfolding. The shift in power is taking place, the shift in the character of our country and who runs our country, right, it's already changed from being our country to something we can't direct, right, or resist.
Because none of these people weren't, we already had a coup with Biden coming in because that election was stolen. I am 100% convinced of that. Now you're claiming we're having another coup, which the evidence you're putting forward is pretty overwhelming. They are acting like a banana republic. They don't care about procedure in the democratic republic. They care about putting themselves into power and taking control at any means necessary.
Well, see, I hate to keeping this person, but they've already taken control.
Okay.
Like they've already taken control. If you can try to assassinate a president and no one's in jail, they've already taken control. Do you think, like, every day President Trump is surrounded by Secret Service? How is that safe for him, right? Every day RFK Jr. is surrounded by Secret Service. How is that safe for him? On some level, the Secret Service holds people hostage at this point, right? Like, they let the president get shot. Like, no one's processing that as fully as they need to. No one's in jail for an American president having been shot at the head, right?
Well, the mainstream media went as far as saying it was fake and it was faked. And Google wouldn't even allow the searches to come up. And, Facebook, they all were saying it was fake. They're putting all that information out there.
Well, so Sarah, this is, you're a great investigative journalist. The times we're in, you can tell what's real by the kind of banning and censoring that is directed at it, right? I mean, I
That's right.
mentioned a coup in response to crimes by Biden family members. And half an hour later, all my devices were hacked. I couldn't send emails. I was banned from Twitter and YouTube. And, once again, I was unpersoned digitally, right? Half an hour later. So my point is, if you're dealing with people who can shoot at a president with impunity, which has happened, no one's in prison, right? No one, like Cheadle resigned, big deal. She probably has some gigantic board position, that was arranged in advance at some company, or she will. No one's in prison for poisoning the American people, and we've documented all the ways that happened with a bioweapon. No one has gone to jail. There's absolute impunity. Why do we think if they don't like, why does Harris look so nervous? Why is she always kind of cognitively impaired? I'd be drinking if I didn't know these are murderers, right? These are mafiosi. If they can try to take out President Trump, why do we think they might not just replace or threaten or bully, Harris's husband, Waltz, RFK, these are mafiosi. And, they imprisoned Steve Bannon. I think the Trump campaign would be in a much stronger place right now if Bannon could communicate with the world, which he can't. So there's just no reason. I mean, I guess the thing about Americans that makes me sad is that they have never lived in a true police state before. So they keep thinking like people in a republic. And what I am sorry to tell you is that time is over. You can get your republic back, arguably, but you don't have it right now. It's going to take
So how do we get it back? How do we get it back if we lost it? And because everybody thinks like a republic, you're right. So how do you get a republic back from a communist dictatorship that we're in?
That's a tough question.
Because I look at my stuff and I say the YouTube actions, the YouTube rule is legit. Like if you look and see what they do, who they ban and who they support tells you what this mafiosa is in favor of. Like I think you can really watch those trends. I've been looking at these patterns and I'm seeing it across all the mainstream media. I can tell now what they're supporting, what they're not supporting based on what these people are propping up and who they're censoring. We know,
sure.
Yeah, we know what they're doing, but how do we fight against it in any realistic way when the tech companies have they've just taken over? I mean, how do we make this happen? I know we have Rumble. I know we have some of these other things, but how do we realistically, what things can we do?
Yeah, that's a very, I used very easy answers for that. I mean, not easy to execute. They took work and commitment, but easy to identify. But everything I've warned people not to allow to happen has happened. Yeah.
Well, and Russia came out and invited people to their country and said, if you want a place to go, it's crazy. Like, what the heck?
He's such a fabulous troll. He trolls the West. That's really, well, I mean, he's right to troll us in that way because it's not just us. Look at what happened to Britain and Australia and France, like overnight, Ireland, the Netherlands, they're crushed. And we're doing better, Canada. Oh my God.
Yes, I know. We're actually doing a little bit better than them because we still have some semblance of sanity in some areas.
Well, but I mean, it's more than that, Sarah. We have many, many, many people who didn't comply.
Right. That's right.
And organized and didn't comply. And enough of an infrastructure of democracy so that they knew they could figure out what to do to not comply. And that got eaten out of Australia and Canada and Western Europe, but honestly, there's no excuse. Those people should have figured it out too, or rebelled like Hungary did. Or, they brought down the Soviet Union, like Estonia. My favorite revolution is the singing revolution of Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia that, held hands across their borders, standing on a national highway and sang their national anthems and stopped business as usual and brought down the Soviet Union. Like, mass resistance does, like, when people deploy mass resistance, it's very hard for any tyrants to execute their plans. But
that's right.
But, don't get mad at me, Australia, Canada, Britain, France, overwhelmingly that you rolled over. Ireland, and I'm reading histories of these countries that, these were fierce fighters for freedom. I mean, Ireland fought and ultimately overcame the biggest tyranny, the biggest empire in the world at that time, the British Empire. Yeah. Eventually they won. France fought Germany and eventually won, with our help. I mean, what happened? Like Australia was a nation of prisoners that, made a new life for themselves. They were tough, hardy people. What happened? People just rolled over.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to do now to us, though. There's this I'm calling it learned helplessness. And they're putting out these people and they're telling people that no side matters anymore, that all sides are bad, all sides are the same. The only way to solve this problem is let the whole system collapse so that we can create pro-human stuff. It's like, well, you're just, and that's what YouTube is promoting in some of these people. They're also communists and there's other things. I am convinced.
Straight out of the communist playbook. Like, let it all collapse is straight out of the communist playbook.
That's my point. And so the learned helplessness, a lot of these people that come across as pretty legit journalists, and I have a lot of data now that I've been working on for the last month that I don't know how to come out with it because it'll blow back on me a lot because people won't understand, because some of these people they believe are legit. And I don't want to create this infighting amongst people. And a lot of these people I don't think realize that they're doing that. But YouTube is promoting this. I actually think Twitter is to a certain degree too. And it's this learned helplessness that everyone is bad, everyone's the same, and the only way to make this work is to just let everything collapse. It's like, well no.
I haven't seen that. Your algorithm must be different from mine. Who's promoting it? I mean, obviously, Sarah, if you've got documentation, you should put it out there. I mean, let the chips fall where they may.
Well, yeah, the reason why I think it's YouTube is because I'm seeing millions of views for certain people. And some of the pro-communist, like when I was in China, I went to China and I was on this delegation. We were the last people out of China before COVID. I was with Cynthia McKinney, and it was this weird combination of...
You were with Cynthia McKinney in China, Sarah?
Yeah, in 2019. And me and Cynthia are pretty good friends. And
who arranged that delegation?
She did with this other person. And I'm like, my daughter was getting a degree in Chinese.
Slow down. Who funded it?
We all did. We all funded our own trip.
Okay.
Yeah. All so right. It wasn't like this funded CCP thing. So anyways, my daughter was getting a degree in Chinese. And I'm like, and so one of the things that I told her, she was graduating from high school, is let's go to China. It was right after she graduated. And she was her first year of college. So we went there. And there was this weird split of people like me who were more libertarian, and because I'm more independent and libertarian, and this communist. It was really like half the people were like me and half the people were communists. And there was this journalist, Daniel, I forgot his name. I can never spell his last name. He's Daniel Nugua or whatever. And he's very promoted on YouTube. When we were there, he probably had maybe 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now he has 500,000. He's getting millions of views. When we did our chai and tea, we'd go every night or every couple nights, we'd do these different people would talk and we'd talk about issues. And it was his night. And he talked about how the bourgeoisie need to be killed. I mean, we'd taken out. Jesus. And that,
Yeah. And I'm like, and I confronted him about him. Me and him fought half the trip, right? After I started realizing who he was. And he was so nasty to people. And I put him in his, I had to just step up because I'm like, this guy is terrible. But they were having private meetings with the CCP. They
Mhm.
put, President Xi was our president on there, hashtag our president, all these things.
No.
Oh, yeah. And
Holy
these
cow.
guys are, yeah, and I'm sitting there an idiot. I'm just going there to have my daughter have an experience. And I'm telling you, half the people were libertarian and absolutely opposite from these guys. It was like this clash of cultures in this
Mm,
group.
mm.
But it was the most interesting experience I've ever had. And I can tell you right now that these people, these journalists, are involved in it. And when you look at like Mint Press News, maybe
Yeah.
people can start connecting some of the dots here of who I'm talking about. Mint Press News out of Minneapolis and the Serena Shim Awards that are going to all these people. There is a communist underbelly that is happening, and all these journalists that are pushing this learned helplessness are
Mhm.
involved in it. And I'm telling you, and the other thing, Naomi, I'm learning is there's this whole independent funding mechanism for these people.
Wow. Well, you
And
better write about it. I mean,
yeah,
this is
I'm working on it. I just don't, I need the receipts. It's more like people telling me that they've seen the payments, and it's really hard to get the receipts. Now, the Serena Shimmer Awards, we have receipts on that.
what is the name you're putting out there? What's the name?
Serena Shim Awards, which is out of Syria.
Shim? How do you spell
People
it?
can look it up. Serena Shim, Shim Awards. These are
Okay.
awards that are coming out of Syria to fund
Oh,
journalists.
my God.
Yeah.
Well, Minpress News is Iran.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Mint Press News is out of Minneapolis, and they actually do some good reporting to a certain
Sweetheart,
degree.
it's not out of Minneapolis. I mean, that may be the front address, but it's Mint Press News is Iranian. Like it's the
Oh,
Iranian.
really? Well, good. I'm glad you told me that because I'm telling you that it's not what people think it is. And there's a lot of journalists like I'm going to say it. Whitney Webb is connected to Mint Press News. Okay. And there's other people connected there. And I'm telling you, it's not what people think it is. And it's people are following these people because they did some good journalism. They come across as legit, but they're also sending you the message that everyone's bad and that it's
Yeah,
hopeless.
it's hopeless. That's true. That's true. On reflection, that's true. Well, I think it's very important for you to trace the money. And even if you can't identify the recipients of these awards, you should, definitely expose the awards. And if you don't want to write it up, send it to my husband, Brian O'Shea, who's writing
I'll
it up and
talk
help.
to him. You know what? If I'll have a good conversation with him, and he can come up with what. And I don't have all the receipts. I have many conversations with people.
The
I
propagandists,
have
news
I
sites.
have many authors that are talking about stolen material without credit. I have all this stuff, but it's like, God, I don't know how to present it without it demoralizing people. That's what I don't want to do. I don't want to demoralize people.
You know,
And at the same time, I wanted to be helpful in this time of fifth generation war. How do we help people and not demoralize everybody more?
I think that you have to stop being codependent with your audience. I'm sorry to be so rude, but I'm
No, I
trying
don't care. Go ahead, say it like it is.
a talented younger journalist. It's not your problem how people receive the truth. They'll receive the truth however they want to receive the truth. It's your job to just present the truth. And if you're a journalist, you just need to uncover what's real and let people find their own way to stay moralized. I mean, I get overwhelmed looking at the horrors of, for instance, the mass poisoning of all of humanity or three-quarters of humanity. But, thank God the people who brought out the information were scientists and didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't hype it. They just presented the
That's
facts.
right.
And, I
Yeah.
find my own way to survive, whether it's prayer or a glass of wine or a walk in the park, like we're all in uncharted territory in terms of emotional equilibrium, you can't worry about that. There's enough people out there spinning the truth or sugarcoating the truth. It's much more important for people to really understand what they're up against. And that's the only way people can survive and strategize. And look, we're so soft, Sarah, our ancestors. No, seriously, I'm reading memoirs of like pioneers, I'm reading Willa Cather, or reading memoirs of people in Germany in the 30s, or even looking at ancestry and looking at, all my relatives who did survive by escaping, all my relatives who didn't survive, my relatives who walked through forests to survive, my relatives who were escaping the Cossacks to survive. How can I put this? If we don't know what our true enemies are, we can't survive them.
That's
but
right.
if
That's right.
We can strategize around how to survive them.
And maybe your husband has a way to uncover some of the information that I have that I can't prove out yet. Because some of this explosive information that I have that I want to prove out, we're having this conversation. Usually I would have this conversation offline, but this is really good because I think the public can hear what we go through. Some of this information that I have on some of these organizations, I've been told things, but I can't prove it out yet. And it's kind of explosive. It's like, tied to big media conglomerates who are funding, places like Mint Press News and these independent journalists. And people don't realize that this whole independent network isn't independent.
Right. Well, certainly you should contact him and talk to him about it and give him whatever you want to give him. It's his job. He's an investigator. He also was in the intel community. So he's familiar with us doing this to other countries, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Be helpful. But let's go back to what you and I can do, without bringing the boyfriend, right? How can I put it? The coup is here, and you asked me what can people do, and I answered one big, number one thing you can do is face it, right? So, you're a part of that. If Sarah has information, present it, let us face it. If I have information, I'm presenting it, I'm letting you face it. The other thing is, I think we need to expect an attack, right? And really just look around. I've been saying this for months, and everything I've been warning has unfortunately come true. We need to know what to do if the lights go out for 2 weeks, right? We need to know we need to have 6 months of food in our homes, right? Not at the supermarket. We need to know, we need to be as analog as possible, right? Don't buy an electric car, right? Have gas in your garage or in your closet, right? Have propane. We need to print out all of our assets because you can bet that there will be a cyber attack. And, where's the title to your house? I don't know. The state has it, right? I've been watching a series called, World's Worst Roommate, and I'm here in Brooklyn, and literally the laws in New York State and in California about squatters make it almost impossible to get people out of your home. And people are, using Airbnb to move into people's property and just not move out. And this looks very systemic. Okay, so I think you can expect a war on property. You need to print out all of your assets and keep them in a lockbox, in paper records, your bank statements, paper records. I would say diversify, as much as possible. Like, I'm buying gold. Right. Yes, we have a gold sponsor, but I still think it's a very good idea to buy gold. And my relatives who had to leave their businesses and their homes, they survived by sewing gold or jewels into these were not rich people. It's like what they had, right? They sold everything they had, bought gold, bought jewels, sewed them into the hems of their clothing. So one reason to, I believe in gold ancestrally is that if you have to flee, you can take it with you, right?
You can wear it as a necklace. That's what I was told by Chinese people, that they would do that because they could wear enough gold as a necklace and they would be okay when they ran.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I guess my people wouldn't get to keep the necklace.
Well, yeah, but that was what, just somebody from China that I was talking to. This was years ago when we were talking about buying gold. This was in like 2017.
Totally.
And that was what their philosophy was, is they could escape, put it around their neck, and they would survive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we need to think like that. How will you survive tomorrow if you wake up? And because, they did a trial run with the pandemic, right? And told us there was a horrible virus that was going to kill us all, and successfully locked us in our homes for a year and a half, except for those of us like me and Brian who knew it was nonsense and immediately went on a road trip, but and had a potluck. But they can tomorrow, be all over all the media that they own saying there's been a dirty bomb in Midtown Manhattan. Everyone stay in your homes so you won't get, poisoned by radiation or whatever the dirty bomb has in it. And if that happens, what will you do? How will you get out? I mean, I especially think about, like, I'm in Brooklyn, right? If I was on the island of Manhattan, I'd be very vulnerable because bridges and tunnels, you're on an island. So if you're on an island, think about how you're going to get off the island, right? Make friends with a farmer, make friends with a fisherman, make friends with someone who has a boat. The most important thing I think we can do right now is hold neighborhood gatherings, literally potlucks, where you have 30 people in your living room and you make a plan. Like if everything goes down, who has a generator, who has a vegetable garden, who has access to a vegetable garden, who has chickens, right? Or who has a car and can go to the country and get chickens, right? I mean, literally, you need to make these kinds of action plans. And, again, for Second Amendment, I used to be a liberal and I thought guns were horrible, but I take the Constitution seriously. And I'm also now convinced that, one reason we're not as bad off as Australia and Canada is we have a Second Amendment. People have guns here. They haven't taken our guns. And that's critical. So stock ammo, stock up on weapons, learn to shoot, learn self-defense, right? All of these things, get pepper spray. I mean, it's going to be very ugly. And lastly, you talk about what do we do? They own social media. What do we do? They own the media. I guess what I would like to say here is for my doctoral thesis at Oxford, I wrote a history of censorship. And interestingly, they tried to kill the book based on that, because it talked about how the British Empire used epidemics to strip people of their rights. But having said that, censorship never works. Over time, it just doesn't work. And why do I bring that up? We've been conditioned. You're right to look at learned helplessness. Well, part of learned helplessness is social media is the most important thing. Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are the most important thing. They're fucking not important. I'm sorry. Like, yes, they can be a powerful organizing tool, my language, but also I'm 61. 20 years ago, we didn't have social media. People communicated, right? 100 years ago, we didn't have, television. People communicated. 300 years ago, we barely had a printing press. We had pamphlets, and there was the revolution. 200 whatever years ago, there was the Revolutionary War based on the pamphlets. Thomas Paine wrote Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense in a pamphlet that was handed out. The Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union collapsed because of samizdat, which is like books that people passed from hand to hand. So honestly, we have to re-privilege human beings in a town hall, human beings going to see a lecturer, human beings in a living room listening to a speaker, books, paper, because they can't silence us if we stop relying on their, I'm trying not to use obscenities, but they don't own human communications, right? We just let them tell us that they own human communications. They don't. We need to have such a robust analog communications habit again. People talking face to face, going to town hall meetings, going to school board meetings, going to vote in person, watching the polls. Lobbying their congressman in person, lobbying their state senator in person, organizing their neighbors, that these people know they can't restrict the flow of information if they decide to censor us or promote nothing but propaganda. Humans are able to I'm a CEO of a tech company, and there is no technology and no surveillance technology that is equal to two human beings communicating in a room.
That's absolutely right. I think that they're trying to change the mental attitude of people, where they think the younger generations really don't know how to communicate with each other. We grew up without that, so we have to somehow get the younger generations. They talk about they're just being holdouts. They're being underground holdouts, and I hope that's not what we're talking about here. I hope we can overcome this and it not getting to that point.
I don't know what an underground holdout is, so before
Meaning underground, meaning that we're going to be meeting in person. We're going to try to fight it, but we're not in the public space. We're doing it because the masses will still be doing it publicly in all the social media outlets, and they don't know how to operate anymore other than that. And there'll be holdouts doing what you're saying. That's how I just worded it. Maybe there's a better way of saying it.
I hear you, but I'd like to flip it around. I mean, think about, President Lincoln addressed a gigantic crowd in Cooper Union, which is an auditorium on 14th Street in New York. Huge crowds attended whistle-stop campaigns. The Douglas Lincoln debates were outdoors with huge crowds. I would like to change the language that you just described. I want people to start thinking again about, we are the public, right? And when we gather, that's public, right? These social media companies are just shadows,
For
right?
sure.
We need the power to make, be in a theater, be in an auditorium, be in a protest, be in town hall. And IRL has to be the public again, with social media as a backup that is fungible. I don't want to think about humans gathering as a secretive thing or as an afterthought. It used to be the public, and it can be again. That's very important because we control.
Yeah, because that's something we control. Because if you're depending on social media, my background is tech, and I don't know if you know that how much of my background is tech. In what I did, but I know how powerful these tech companies are and how they can completely they can dominate absolutely everything if we let them.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I don't keep pushing back, but I definitely don't want to end on that note. My book, The Bodies of Others, pointed out that the lockdowns really were designed to strengthen the role of tech and it did by 23% net revenue, but also our habits were changed by the lockdowns so that tech became the filter through which we all interacted. Churches died and clubs died and bowling leagues died, didn't resuscitate. So that's why I'm saying they are powerful now, but we let them be powerful. And by taking our power back as human beings, they'll have to struggle for our attention, which is healthy.
Okay, so let's end it with one last thing. What do you suggest each person should do to change that situation, take power back to themselves? You said some stuff, but if you could give them a couple things they could do, what would you tell them?
I mean, honestly, beyond what I've just shared, I've been very, 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 very patient with my fellow Americans for the 4 years I've been trying to warn them that this day would come. And I'm kind of out of patience personally. So I've told them already how to resist and how to fight back and how to organize and how to, I built a tool so that they can pass their own laws or change laws. They're passive couch dwellers. I mean, I'm sorry. They let their country get stolen away from them, the best country in the world, the best system humanity has ever had. So I've lost a lot of respect for most of my fellow Americans, and I'm done cosseting them. So now I will just say, it's a horrible death in a tyrannical regime. It's a horrible death in a communist regime. They can take away your kids tomorrow. They can take your property tomorrow. I'm bored trying to tell you how bad it is in communism. So all I will say is, read a book about Life Under Mao or Life Under Stalin, before, sitting on your couch and letting me try to warn you that it's better to live as free people than as slaves in communism.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Where can they follow you?
Thank you. Sorry to be so mean.
It is what it is.
Yes, they can follow me I'm back on X, because who knows why. I called for a shareholder revolution if I didn't get back on X, an advertiser resistance. So I'm back on X at Naomi R. Wolf. I'm on Daily Clout, where we are honored to have your show as well. And that show is called Outspoken. You can find my essays there too, and also on Substack on Outspoken. And thank you. Please support us so we can keep bringing you wonderful voices like Sarah's.
Yes, and thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on there. And thank you for coming on and sharing your truth and being a fighter for the people. That's what we need. We need more people to be like you. That's what you're telling people.
I am. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.